it goes back to what you're saying about helping people, right? Because sometimes we think of helping people means to give them money or to you know build something, but sometimes just listening, I think, right, listening to somebody's story is some of the big emotional mental help that you could give somebody. It feels like, especially when you feel alone and you're older and you just kind of feel abandoned.
And if I just could backtrack a little bit, and so when I was a little kid, I I've always wanted to help people. I would say that's my grand mission statement for life, and it has actually through everything I've done. It's exemplified. My dad was in a union, so he always advocated for justice and fairness. And I did not realize that this came out like about a year ago, and I was like, oh my god, this is why I advocate. I am like, right, I'm the one who will speak up, right, for whatever it is, and I have, and sometimes I get my hand slapped for it. Sorry, I just can't sit there and watch whatever it is.
Oh, hello, Florence, how are you? I tried to make it as uncomfortable. We were just talking, and I was like, "Don't worry, we're gonna wing this. It'll be super fun." And I promise I'm not gonna make this uncomfortable. In less than 2 seconds, I make it uncomfortable. How about that?
Yeah, you're like, hello,
Yeah.
Florence. That's what's up.
Yeah, exactly. Hi. Oh my God, this is gonna
What's
be
up,
good. So,
G? Oh, I can
what's up,
actually
G?
say you are a G.
I am a G. I don't get that a lot these days since I left Miami, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll be G today. Um,
Use it.
Episode two, we're super excited to have Florence Fanelli on here. So, Florence, you reached out after you saw the first podcast. We've been talking off and on for a couple of weeks trying to make this happen. Uh, I know your story, and I think it's really an amazing story that I want people to hear. First of all, I think you're one of the most interesting people I've talked to in a long time because the way we bounce back and forth, it always feels like there's something to talk about. It's interesting. It's not just talking for talking's sake. So I wanted to highlight you. I want to highlight your what you're going to get into, what we talked about. I want to spoil it just up front, and kind of the future. And like I said, I want to circle back in the future and see where we landed, right? Because this is all about small businesses, growing people, growing communities, helping people out. And I feel like we could really help each other here. So if you could introduce yourself, I think it'd be really exciting.
Sure. Well, thanks for that. I feel my soul feels touched. Thank you.
Oh,
And that's genuine.
yeah.
So I'm Florence Finelli, sometimes known as Flo Finelli, but that's an earned name. No, I'm joking. So who am I? Well, I live in Washington, D.C. metro area. I'm happy to be here. And like as Gus said, I reached out to him and said, oh, wow. So I love this whole thing, like you were saying about helping each other grow.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to be on this. Yeah, I'm not like, I think we do vibe great. We
Yeah,
vibe very, very well, just flow. And like, there's nothing scripted here, folks. Nothing
exactly.
scripted.
Yeah. Shh, don't tell them that. It's
Freestyle.
yeah, exactly. But your background, let's just hit it off, right? So
Sure.
you're connected via USAID, it feels like, right? Like when we were talking, that's where you kind of saw the video. Um and how you got to USAID and where you started, and it's a completely roundabout way that I don't think I think for people who are growing their careers, they're always wondering like how, for me, it was, I don't even know what I want to be, but for most people, it's like, I have a trajectory, right? I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. And you're like, no, no, I was an IT person in telecom, and then I became an HR person, and then I'm in Africa now with USAID. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, how did we get from point A to point B? So walk us through. I think it would be cool for people who just either don't have a trajectory or always, especially like the world we live in, things are constantly changing and everybody's super scared about the next step and what are we doing. I feel like your story highlights it's okay. Just ride that wave and let's see where we land. So walk me through. I know we did this already, but walk me through kind of the journey there. So I think that's pretty awesome. I think people need to hear it.
Yeah, no, great, thanks. Yes, like you said, I'm not your usual suspect of like the long-term career, stay for 40 years and retire kind of thing. I'm not that old even to do that yet. But anyway,
Mhm.
so once upon a time, I went to graduate school and I originally was studying French studies as my master's degree. And I was taking business classes. At that point, I was already fluent in French. My undergrad was in French, German, and business. And then my business professor said, "Well, do you want to get your PhD? Do you want to teach academia?" And I was like, "Oh, hell no." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just do an MBA?" And I was like, "Okay, sounds cool."
Sure. I'll just do that right now. Like,
No, exactly. So
yeah.
I added an extra year into my studies. I went to American University. Go Eagles.
Mm-mm.
And so I did. I received my MBA, my concentration in human resources management. And if I just could backtrack a little bit, and so when I was a little kid, I've always wanted to help people. I would say that's my grand mission statement for life. And it has actually, through everything I've done, it's exemplified. So I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a nurse. I volunteered in a hospital for 4 years as a candy striper. For those who don't know what a candy striper is, it's just a volunteer at a hospital. I worked in all the different departments. And the nurses were like, "Do not become a nurse." I was like, because
Well,
I saw
thanks.
it. I know. I was like, what? And I have the perfect name for a nurse, Florence Nightingale, right? So,
What did you
yeah.
do? Like, I'm worried now. I want to know more about what happened. That they're like, no, 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 you can't be. Did you murder somebody? Like, what happened? Did you too much?
No, they were like the doctors treat you like trash.
Oh, I got you. Yes, I've
And
heard
yeah, they're
this. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, because I actually worked on the floors a lot. I loved it. I like anything from like changing the beds and cleaning things to feeding patients, getting
yeah.
ice. I love talking to the patients, right? Because I always have felt that, wow, what's your story? What can I learn from you?
Right, right.
And especially with older generations, I'm like, give me the nuggets, give me the wisdom, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Even this is like 16, 17. What should I do? Right.
Well, I
So
think
then,
it goes back to what you're saying about helping people, right? Because sometimes we think of helping people means to give them money or to build something, but sometimes just listening. I think, right, listening to somebody's story is some of the big emotional, mental help that you could give somebody. It feels like, especially when you feel alone and you're older and you just kind of feel abandoned. So,
no, 100%. It's just actually your presence. You're
right,
right. You're spot on that it's a gift for people. And I had no idea, right? I just was hungry for knowledge. I've
yeah.
always been extremely curious, still to this day. Some people may not like that because I ask a lot of questions, but my brain's like, okay, putting all the things together. So, yeah, I went to high school, my undergrad, like I said, German, business, and French. I know, weird combination, but I did. That's when I got my first taste for business. I liked it. I was like, okay, cool. Because
Mhm.
everyone's like, what are you going to do with your language skills, Florence? And I was like, okay, I'll throw some business on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then grad school, like I said, I obtained my MBA, concentration in human resources management. When I graduated, I went to the private sector, as every good MBAer usually
That's
does,
right.
right? And so I worked in IT, information technology, for those, because I would like to spell out acronyms. I never assume anybody knows what that is.
Right.
And also telecommunications companies. So, which was an interesting ride, as a HR person, also as a woman in very
Yeah.
male dominated, back, this was a while ago, is even more so, and they still is male dominated industries. So I had to make a seat at the table, if you will. And I learned how to work with the rough around the edges boys and things like that, the good old boys clubs. And like, I was like, no, I'm going to make my seat. And I made myself like a asset to them and work with them. Right. And how, everything is not black and white. Some things are egregious things, but there is flexibility in policy, let's say, right? So, and actually, I found them to be very interesting and funny. They used to call me Fanelli. I'd be like, dudes, like I'm in HR. They're like, yo, Fanelli, we were playing basketball last night. and they're swearing, and I was like,
what is this? What have I gotten myself into?
HR,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
not. They're like, oh, come on, Fanelli, you're cool. And I was like, okay, I am cool. This is weird, but all right, right? Like, it was
yeah,
that partnership. It was like that, like developing a relationship. And I was like, all right, we'll do it. And I was like, no, you can't fire them. So then they respected me, right? I was like, unless you want to be sued. They're like, oh my God.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah. And then unfortunately, in both industries, I had to lay off thousands of people and then lay myself off. So
Worst.
that
The
I
worst. Like,
know, right?
it's like I had to do that for a company, and I was just, it's
Ah,
weird that you brought that up. I know we talked a lot, but we didn't talk about that. And like the nickname was like the here comes the Grim Reaper. But what they didn't know is, yeah, I'm laying all of you off. But at the end, it's to sign my own death warrant, right? At the end, like I'm
exactly.
out too. It's not like I'm here
I
like,
know.
yeah, it's the worst.
I
It's
had to
not a
do the
fun thing.
dirty work and then do it
Right.
to myself. I knew the inevitable. And in order to get my severance, I had to do all of this stuff.
That's right. They make you sign the little paper that
So,
says, "Oh, you have to be the bad guy. That these people in your network are going to hate you forever, but we'll be fine. Thank you, Flo. We appreciate your services here." Right? Like it's so horrible.
right. And you know what? Speaking of nicknames, they called me, you had the Grim Reaper. I had Florence Finally.
Nice.
Okay. I know it was personalized way. And
Yeah,
then the Hatchet Lady.
the hatchet
So
lady.
I was like, yeah.
Hmm.
And now, you disassociate, you
Yeah.
internalize because you got to
Right.
get through it. And
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
grown men cry, see people punch the wall, holes in the walls because they're angry, right? And I'm
The
like, dude,
table throwing.
that's,
I had we had somebody.
yeah.
It was my first. This wasn't this event. It was the first time I had to let somebody go, and the person you don't know what to expect. You're freaking out. Guy grabs the table and like chucks it, and like not like a little like a simple white picnic table, like a boardroom table, and just like I'm like, great, this is how it starts, yay! But seeing that in person for the first time, you're like, what? So I can imagine going through thousands of people, which I've never had to do. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's like you're living in a movie. I
Right,
think
right,
so because you cannot predict a person's reaction, right? And this is what I always used to tell supervisors and stuff. I'm like, people are not computers. You cannot
right,
turn them on and off. And as we know in many industries, it's the only way to, move up the ladder is to
for sure.
supervise
Yeah,
people. And I'm like, dude, you should not be supervising people. But anyway,
yeah. That's
like,
a whole other podcast there. The
I
do's and
know.
don'ts of supervisory, right?
Oh
Oh,
my gosh, I've seen them all. I call it
yes.
crazy humans doing crazy things.
I feel like it's gotten
Um,
softer though. This is weird because you're old school, right? So you're talking about your experiences. I remember when I first started working for an established company, not like mowing the lawn or paper or whatever. It was an insurance company, and I've got my little IT certificates. I'm ready to work on computers, and I see two who I assume were executives go into a room, yeah, just like screaming at each other. I'm like, what is this? Like fighting. And I was like, this sounds like my parents at home. Like, what is happening here? I just thought because you see it in the movies, right? Everybody's like prim and proper. And that was not the case back then. Back then, it was like the Wild West. F bomb
oh
you,
yeah.
you F this and S that and this, that. I'm like, what is this? But now I can't imagine going like taking people in a modern business, world and say, hey, let's go back in time and watch this and say, like, you couldn't get away with 1% of what was happening back in the 90s or late
Wow.
80s.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I've seen all kinds of whack things, like inappropriate things. I've experienced them, like dudes using their corporate card to go to a strip club,
But yeah, well,
right?
that
As you
was
do.
no right. So, hey, calm down, all right? Don't ruin my game. No, I remember we would try to buy stuff from I'm not gonna say the company, but salespeople for these large, we're talking multi-billion-dollar companies that they just have resellers that are selling IT equipment, funny enough. And the guy's sales pitch is like, cool, look, we'll give you a discount and then we'll get another percentage of that, and we're gonna use that to go to the Cheetah Club down here. And I'm like, what? I'm married, dude. What are you talking about? I say, no, it's fine. It's how we do it. And then the other, like my coworkers say, yeah, let's take that discount. That's the discount. I'm like, what is this? But yeah, that was So you've seen
She's
you've seen it, right? Like the HR wildness, that you had to probably cope with.
I was like, yeah, like what did the stupid human do today? Like it's just, I mean, seriously, I could write a book on that alone. Like, I'm
Yep.
not joking. Like, and also even so after, just to get back to my
Yeah. Yeah.
story too.
Sorry.
So
Yep. Yep. Yep.
no, not
Yeah.
at all. I love digressing,
Yeah.
as you can see. So after laying off these ridiculous amounts of like good humans,
Right.
one of my colleagues was like, hey, they landed at the American Red Cross national headquarters in Washington, D.C. And they said, hey, there's a job opening. Should I throw your hat and, your resume in? And I was like, dude, I don't know, man. That's a not for profit, I think, right? Like, I have an MBA and I think I'm pretty much set on the private sector, right? And because that was one of the first, I'm never going to. There's more to come, people. There's more to come.
Yeah.
So I said, sure, why not? Whatever. And then I landed the job. That's when I first fell in love with mission driven work instead of bottom line driven.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, what? I did struggle I was there for 5.5 years and I loved it. But sometimes what I did struggle with is, and I still do to today, is that people like living in a box, right? Yeah. Think I can't get out.
Right. Stuck.
Yeah. And I'd be like, of course I came with a private sector lens. And I was like, well, why would you do this? Because that's how it's done. And I said, well, just because Clara Barton did it doesn't mean that we have to do it. Now, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross.
Right.
Right?
I was like, yo, why are you name dropping like strangers? Like, what are you doing?
Who the heck is Clara? Yeah. No, she was.
I'll put a picture up when I recut it. I'm gonna put a picture up of her. Like, she's gonna pop up. Like, hi.
Yeah, she founded in the 1800s, man. And I was like, okay. And then people used to laugh at me, and they thought, oh, how could she say this? This is like incredulous. Like,
Yeah.
So anyway, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I originally was in HR there. People doing wild things again. Even that was the thing. People are going to people.
People are going to people.
Even in the not-for-profit, wild and stuff happening. I'm telling you. I was like, say what?
That's gonna be the first clip. People are gonna people. We're gonna quote that because that you are on point. It doesn't matter process, countries.
I swear, it's just like, wow, what do we do? It's like the human. Like I feel like I've been living a case study my entire life. That's what it is. Just had this epiphany, right? Like case study of like humans and understanding them and human connection. But yeah, it was great. And then I morphed into another section, or the Red Cross, preparedness, health, and safety services. And that was my foray into like project management and program management, which I loved. And so that division did all of the aquatics, first aid, CPR. So if you go to your local Y and get swim lessons, it's American Red Cross materials that you're using, right? Yeah.
That's so cool. I didn't even think about that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And also first aid and CPR. The only other competitor is the American Heart Association, but they're often wilderness first aid, Red Cross. Like, it's so cool. So I was in charge of that nationally and supporting our chapters. At that time, there were 900 Red Cross chapters in the country. They since like merged and it's lessened. And one of my favorite things I did, we had this, we called it Hispanic Latino Initiative. And it was actually translating our materials into Spanish in communities that needed them. So in California, Washington State, because there were migrant workers, right? Picking, and they migrate all over the country according to crops and then, the harvest season. So it is really cool. And I had like a budget of $250,000 and we made it happen. And so it was great.
And to highlight, that's not an easy thing, right? Because so now, right, in the world that we live in, that's ChatGPT, that's 2 seconds, that's in and out. But I have to assume you're talking about hours and hours of work of multiple people, like putting these materials together. It's not just, there was no PowerPoint, there was no, it was, you had to lay pen to paper and, obviously not paper, but you had to commit time to knock that out.
And also to get it published with our publisher and everything, even the technical aspects had to be translated, right? First aid CPR it's science, all of these things, and aquatics, everything. Yeah, so actually, I think about it, it is a pretty big feat.
Right.
And to serve like the underserved communities, right? That was the most amazing thing. And the chapters were so happy because they're always like in LA or wherever it was, even down South Texas. They're like, oh my gosh, we always had this market. We could like help people, right? Learn these skills, even in an industry and working with companies. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And then I was there until, oh, one of my other favorite things is I deployed for Hurricane Katrina.
Wow.
6 weeks, and that was wow, that was a lot.
I was in Louisiana for Katrina. Katrina was the big Louisiana one, right? The New Orleans
Oh, and Mississippi, yeah,
and
all of them,
Mississippi.
yep.
So when I was working for those insurance companies, we had to obviously, people with a lot of policies, and you jumped in a just ginormous
Oh,
RV, and you
yeah.
got to see. We started in Baton Rouge, which was not good. But when you would drive into Louisiana and you see like those watermarks that are like 20 feet up to a highway, or you start. I don't think the news did it justice because back then it was post, right? So, and then I know it was, they tried their best to show how horrible it was, but I wish there was like modern, cameras and things to really highlight the tragedy that just people forget about.
No, and funny you should say your location. That's where I went. I went to New Orleans.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was based in the Harvey parish called Harvey.
yeah.
And so yes, you can never unsee what you see, like you
Right.
said.
Yeah.
Like for me, like all like two of the parishes, Plaquemines, I still remember St. Bernard's Parish, 100% devastation, which means nothing is inhabitable. Like
Exactly.
nothing is habitable. And when I saw, because the like Mississippi River came, and when I saw like a whole like barge, a cargo ship in the middle of a road.
Yeah. What?
What? It
Yeah.
felt like, in Wizard of Oz, how they had that tornado and wildness. It just
Mm,
felt like I was in a movie. And the
yeah.
devastation, like you said, the lower ninth ward, which is still not recovered,
Yeah.
right? Marginalized populations. No one cares as much,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And
right.
the water lines, the markings on the houses, which were very sad, right? You knew that
Signs with
condemned.
the, yeah,
Yeah, the circle is
yeah.
like casualty. It could be, house condemned, all these things. And you just knew, because that happened in August. I went in October, actually. So yeah, it was just wild. And flying in, we were able to fly in Red
Yeah.
Cross, we could get in, right? And
Yeah.
we were able to get, because we had badges and vests and all that. And flying in, you could see the blue tarps. It was so wild to see. And the stadium or whatever it's called,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoa, that was wild.
This, yeah, I know what you're talking about, where everybody kind of just parked, and that's where you kind of went through it. It was thousands and thousands of
Yeah,
people in
and
one small.
so, and working with the communities, being in the communities, it was just life changing. We worked crazy hours, but it didn't
Right.
matter
Yeah.
because it was ops. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. But once again, so I was on staff relations. That was like the HR kind of an operation. I had 5
Right.
people working under me, basically making sure that like S didn't go up, shit didn't go down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but it did. Like,
Mm,
so this was a crazy giant operation. And once again, people are gonna people.
yeah.
And these are all volunteers that came from around the country. We also had other Red Crescent and Red Cross societies come in to help us, which is wow. We usually go out, like DART, disaster assistance things. And yeah, I did over like 1,000 investigations our team did in 6 weeks. People are gonna that's another book, separate book,
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And I was like, say what, you did what?
Yeah.
Like, and just wild stuff, even like MS-13 gang members who
Mhm.
volunteered.
Wow.
And I know, and I was like, I saw the tats and I was like interviewing him, and I'm like, what the what? So yeah, no, that was very interesting. And yeah, like, but it was fun and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I get the disaster thing.
Well, it
And
goes back to who you are. We started this, and it's all about helping, right? And I think that's exactly why, right? Right. It's just this constant theme in your life story that from I've garnered. It's this is who you are, deep, right? It's not just like saying it to say, it's like in there, right? And it comes out in all these different avenues.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And I
Wait.
just
Oh, we got to stop. You're not perfect. I'm out. Forget it. That's it. It's done. I thought you were exactly.
No, I'm a flawed human.
Yes. We
You
all
give me,
people.
yes, exactly. People, I'm a people who peoples too, a
That's
person who
right.
person.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was actually profound. My son was 6 months. Imagine this.
Wow. Oh my God.
Right. I just finished breastfeeding and everything. And my husband was like, dude, no, go.
Yeah.
I missed his first tooth come in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, he was looking at me like, Psh, what? Like, I know you, but you live right. I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there was some
He's
of that.
judging.
Yeah, I know. And so
Who are
it's
you?
just, I know, because I felt the calling, like you were saying, internal. I was
Yeah.
like, I need to do this.
Yeah. And for people who are not parents, I'm not shaming non-parents or whatever, but this story, if you would have told it to me before I had kids, I would be like, whatever, cool, a tooth. But as a parent, the small wins, they're big. So I understand that sacrifice. Like if somebody tells me, yeah, you're going, I don't have that inner strength that you do, and that's why I love talking to you. It's because I would be like, cool, fam, I'm staying with my kid, right? Like I
Mhm.
and for you to do that, that's big in itself.
Oh, thanks. I didn't
Yeah.
even, yeah. And it's so interesting. And I had support, obviously, to do it. And I missed his first Halloween like that. He was a bumblebee. But like my husband took all the photos and all of that, and it is what it was. And the fact that I was also supported, that was lovely, right?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and I wasn't judged by the people I love the most, right?
Right.
So that, yeah. So then, so after Red Cross, I left there in 2008 to move to Africa, in Tanzania specifically. So what had happened is my husband had received an offer to work with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is another federal agency, otherwise known as MCC. They're still working. They haven't been shut down. So he's
Even through everything so far, they're still up and running.
no, they were frozen or stopped
Yeah.
work order.
Right.
No, because he's based in Mongolia
Okay.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then I think that one has about a year left, and they're just closing it out. So who
Mm-hmm.
knows?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right? Because things are day to day here, and I think
Yeah.
there's a bigger focus in our country right now,
Yeah.
given events this
It
past
happened over the
weekend.
weekend. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
keep up. Are we living
I
in
don't even
this?
know if we want to open that bag of worms, but maybe towards the end.
I know,
But
right?
Lord, yeah,
I just
every
feel like
day it's a new thing. It's like, can we just take a break? Like, give me a week, right? Give me a week of like
no,
no international craziness.
there's no catching up. Like there really isn't. It's like how you say you want to catch up on sleep, which really doesn't
Yeah,
exist. It's the same thing.
yeah.
So protect your mental health at all costs, everybody. That's what I say, or try, whatever that looks like. Anyway, so I quit my job to be a trailing spouse. I still think I'd be an American Red Cross till this day, right? I loved it. I loved my work. But I said, okay, family decision. My kid was 3 at the time. So we signed up for 5 years, and then we moved to Tanzania. And wow, okay, it's an adventure. It was very interesting. I settled my kid in preschool, all those kind of things. And we lived in Dar es Salaam, which is the commercial capital. And so it didn't hurt that it's on the Indian Ocean, right? That you get to see the Indian Ocean every single day. That's when I have bad days. I'd be like, I'm very much a
Sip
beach
tea.
person.
Yeah,
I'm very much a beach person, and palm trees, like palm trees and sunshine and heat are like my equation for happiness. And beach. I don't really need much more. So yeah, so I did that. And then I was like, okay, I'm bored because I'm not one of those ladies who lunch type.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm just not. Like I've always been a working mom.
Mhm.
So I was like, what do we do now? Like, and I can't, and also in these like lunches, I did volunteer for women's like NGOs and help them, right? And do that race. So that was fulfilling for a while. Then it's like, I'm bored and I just can't always talk about my kid. Like, that's just not me. There's more to life. I want to talk about politics or whatever it is, world events. So then I started doing consulting at the American Red Cross delegation there in
Nice.
Tanzania,
Yeah.
right? And I was there for like about a year or so, helping them out, and it was great because I knew. So that was fun, and then that kind of launched like my consulting. Was working with other supporting international NGOs there,
Mhm.
and everything in agriculture, public health, whatever that looked like. And then in 2011, I started working with USAID.
Here's where we get to
Yeah.
the meat and potatoes of why we're here. Good old USAID.
I know. And that was also another never. I am never going to work for the federal government. I
Right.
said,
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Happenstance. So in 2011, I remembered I first supported the public health department in USAID and in the embassy in Tanzania, right? There's a USAID building co-located. And I remember my first meeting and I was like, whoa, like what the heck did I just do? I don't understand this language because acronyms, terminology.
Yes.
And when they talk about imposter syndrome,
For sure.
I was like, this is, in bad English, this ain't it, as my son would say, who's now
Yeah.
20. This ain't it. Right? Like, and
Yeah.
I was like, I know I'm smart. I know I've done a lot of things, but what? And in public health, there's kind of a lot of people have the same type of like, I'm saving the babies. I'm doing like, the
Yeah.
type A kind of personality.
Right.
Not all, but a lot, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, this culture is very weird. I don't know.
Hmm.
But then as I got to know, and also what buffered it out is working with our local staff, the Tanzanians, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're very passionate, but like quite chill.
Hmm.
And I was like, talk to me, help me. Like, what
Yeah.
does this
Yeah.
look
What do you
like?
need? What does this mean? Right.
And one of my jobs, like the first thing was a functional analysis of the departments using my HR background. And I had to interview every single staff member. And there was like what is it? Almost 100 maybe back then. I forgot roughly 100 different staff. Like, what do you do? How many hours do you spend? Like all these things. And the fun thing was that I gained trust from everybody.
Right.
That when I
Step
say
one.
something, yeah.
Always.
And I was like, when I say things are confidential, I actually 100% mean it because I worked in HR
Yeah.
code, right? Like, unless
That's
it's
right.
something egregious, or, illegal, things like that, obviously. But no, and I earned it. And then I was like, okay, I get it. And at one point, one of the random things I had to do was like, triangulate data from 5 fiscal years of funding. Millions and
Without ChatGPT, right? With
just some.
Flow GPT. That's it. That's
Yeah,
the new.
exactly.
Yeah. Large language model Flow GPT coming in 2026.
And a little bit of Excel, sprinkle of Excel,
Yeah,
right?
little pivot tables here and there, right?
Yes, I love a good formula and I
Yeah.
love a good pivot table. I'm such a nerd. Like, I love Excel spreadsheets, but I was just like, say, what is this? What's happening here? And it was for, I don't know if you ever heard of PEPFAR. It's
Mm-mm.
HIV funding. It was an initiative
Okay.
that started from Bush,
Yeah.
right? Interestingly enough, Republican, like former president that started this, helping combat and hopefully cure HIV/AIDS. Globally, it's a huge problem. It still is. Yeah. And I, first of all, like, it was like crazy money, right? Big. And I'm like, wait, what? So I remember Janine she's a mission director currently at the Zimbabwe. I think it's Zimbabwe mission. I'd be like, what is this? Right.
Yeah.
And then helping write papers on tuberculosis and things like this. So it was so cool because I was like, wow, I don't work. I can get my MPH in public health. And I was like, okay, now I can talk the talk. Just like I worked in IT and telco. People often ask, are you programmers? Like, no, dude, I just worked in it. And like C++ up. And then they're like, are you in public health? I was, no, I just worked in it. It's like a sponge. Like I was talking about curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm. It's
And
experience.
like,
The whole thing, and you're so spot on. Like people always, I need to get my degree, and you should, right? You should do these things, and you should study and all that. But where I feel that you're gonna learn the most is in the heat of the fire, right? When you're in the kitchen and they're throwing curveballs at you left and right, and you're like, what do I do with this? I don't, okay, cool. Who do I, building relationships, right? Using
No,
your
that
previous life skills, and you get this guacamole salad of, okay, here, we solved it, but it is time, buddy. Like, it's just like you put the time in and you're going to be golden.
yeah, like you said, flow GGPT. I'm gonna actually, I wrote
Trademark
that
that.
down. I wrote that down just now on
I
here.
thought, yeah.
Because I was like, yes, it was. And I was like, okay, how do I have my analysis skills? I have my finance skills. I have accounting. What are we doing here? And it was like my eyes were so blurry from spreadsheets, but I made it happen and it made sense.
Right.
So I was like, cool. I just translated that basically.
Yeah.
Do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so after I was there for a few years, I then moved to the economic growth office. They poached me, they like to say.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're going to work for this woman? Like, why? And I was like, dude, because I like her and she's giving me a job. So, yeah. It's all about, and so I have to say, I agree with you, just to say what you had mentioned like briefly before, is that it's all about relationship building. That's my advice to anybody.
Yeah.
Do that, right? And I think that's, we all have superpowers, Gus. You have them. What's your superpower?
Octopus. Juggle. Give me all the BS. Juggle it all and hope for the best, right? It's just, that's the superpower. It's how about yours? What's your
Well, I would say that one of them is relationship building. And that's it. That relationship building and actually maintaining them.
Yeah.
So
that's the hardest part that I fail at constantly. Like, we hit it off, we talk really good together back and forth, but where I constantly fail, and these are people with long work relationships, it's just like you get busy, life kind of turns that corner. And if you don't chase that, or at least encourage the back and forth, it's that's so kudos to you. That's the keeping them is the key to that development part is.
Yeah, and I often say the thing even about relationship building is that I'm one of those people where I never met a stranger. I talk to everybody.
Yeah.
I just might be an extrovert. Surprise, I know. Right, off the charts. Right. Yeah, and I'm always, I think to myself is like, I'm interested in them. I know I'm interested, right? Whatever. So, but I'm so interested in other people. Like, what is your story? How did you get here? Just like you're doing today.
Right.
And that's where I get all of this knowledge. Like, okay, so how did you make it through this? Like, what would you do? And then it helps me.
That's right.
Right. So it's like a win-win. I think, people are like, how do you know an Uber driver's whole life story in 25 minutes? I said, because I asked them. I talked to them.
I've developed these skills for the past X amount of years, and I'm really good at it. How about that?
Yeah, and it's fun for me, right? And I think that, and for me, it's that human connection I absolutely love, because I think people, we want to be seen, we want to be validated, we want to be heard, we want to be supported, and we often don't know how to ask for that. And obviously to strangers, it's even weirder in this culture, right? I think in American or Western culture, sometimes community is lacking, right? In certain parts, like Miami, like you said, you're from there, like there's a huge community there of support. But I just think like it's harder in this society. And so that's why I just love like talking to people. Even in Target, I'll be like, hey.
Right. Well, technology doesn't help either, right? So I love technology because if it wasn't for what it is today, you and I couldn't be doing this right now, right? But the screens and the phones and everybody everywhere is just looking down, like there's no eye to eye, right? Like that's gone to the point where, in my previous role, I'd interview somebody and they're just from a different, not about ageism, or I'd talk to somebody and they can't, the eye contact, that's not happening at all. And it's very confusing coming from that quote unquote old school, but just non-technology realm where you just kind of had to pay attention to a person and the words that are coming out of their mouth. And it doesn't exist anymore. It's just everybody's just got not that, I'm not trying to be little ADHD, but whatever, I can't focus for whatever reason. It's not just ADHD. It's just I'm not there. So I don't know where it comes from, if it's just too much TV screens, this, that, the other, but it feels like that skill is lacking.
Yeah, no, I agree. For the folks that are not neurodivergent, there is that whole other swath of folks that I think it's just that we conditioned ourselves to look at reels that are 30 seconds,
Right,
and then
right.
this, that, and it's the doom scrolling.
Yeah,
I
yep.
call it death scrolling
Yeah.
because right, and so I think that has affected our brains and also like dopamine hits and things like
Hmm.
that. That there's so much studies. That's another podcast, my friend.
There you
Uh,
go.
but yeah, so then I worked in economic growth office, absolutely loved it. Then my next passion was agriculture. It was a huge part of the portfolio.
Yeah.
I still want to be a farmer. Like I had learned so much, talk about like soil science, right? The
Hmm.
nitrogen component and then
Yeah.
spacing your crops, drip irrigation. Like I was like, who am I? And I was
Yeah.
like, and then they're like, "Are you an agronomist?" And I was like, "No, I
Yeah.
just
I'm in the field.
I know." And meeting with farmers and the
Yeah.
beneficiaries and see how they just succeeded in Tanzania. They had this thing as Nyambani Nyanya, which means house tomato house, roughly. And basically, their horticulture crops of tomatoes afforded them their profits to build their house. So
Wow.
to me, it was just so cool. And then the woman farmers and the youth farmers and youth entrepreneurship, I'd be like, these kids are it. Like that's one of my passions is youth entrepreneurship and programming for that. And I used to be like a Shark Tank judge on their ideas and stuff
Right,
and
right,
giving
right.
them feedback. And I think, and I was like, oh, and I always felt like, okay, youth, you got to do it. Like, come on, this is how we got to do it. This is, they're like, oh, okay, mama, which is like a respectful, mama. Like, and I'd be like, they're like, no, but you're so successful. I said, yeah, because I've had opportunities. I said, you guys are creating it, you're hustling, you're doing the things. Yeah. And it was so interesting how there was this reverence to me, like they call me mwalimu, like teacher in
Hmm.
Swahili. And I'd be like, no, like, dude, I'm just
Hmm.
doing a job,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was able, like my parents sent me to school, paid for Catholic school, like, and it just, yeah, it was so interesting. Even working with the women, I loved it because I felt like, and I was like, yeah, keep your money, woman. Like, I'd
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
sister, keep your money because
Right.
your husband is somewhere, I don't know where, right? Just do it
Yeah.
and send your kids to school, pay for the medical health care. So yeah, no, I fell in love with that. Like, it's so interesting. I like how I fell into this sector, international development, right? I'm
Right.
not your usual suspect. I did
No.
not go into the Peace Corps, which I
Hmm.
think, I don't know, 80% of them do. I have an MBA, not an MPH or this or that. And yeah, and I actually loved every minute of it. So then I left because of COVID, Tanzania, and I was so sad because I didn't really want to be here. I came back in the middle of COVID.
Yeah. Fun times in the
Um,
US, that whole COVID
I
experiment.
know.
Yeah.
Well, I actually I did get COVID in Tanzania. It was
Hmm.
wild. I was sick for 2 months and I thought, oh my God, this is so bad. And in Tanzania, the former president who's now passed away from not COVID, uh, he basically we stopped counting cases April 26th of that 2020. And then you know what happened? We prayed it away in June or July of that year.
Mm.
Like literally, thank you God, we prayed it away. And I always thought to myself, wow, and I lived through that, right? And I was like, what? And
Hmm.
because like Mecca and Jerusalem and the Vatican and Rome didn't pray it away, but
Right.
Tanzania was, right?
Hmm.
So, and an outlier of all of East Africa, like totally like, no, doesn't exist. So anyway, I came back and then yeah, here was crazy. It was cold. I was like, this is not it. Everything's shut. And I was looking for a new job. And
Hmm.
I said, okay, looking at like partners that USAID work with, had interviews, all these things. And then another never happened.
Hmm. The story of
I
flow.
said, I will never work for USAID headquarters in Washington, D.C., because I'm a field girl, right?
Right, right.
And I've always worked for field. I've never been a headquarter. Well, I mean, American Red Cross, I was, right? But I'm always about the field, which I feel they're often the underdogs, and maybe I am for the underdogs, right? And helping people things. And then I applied And I was like, wow, this could be it was such a cool interview. And my former boss was on it, and he's cool. And he asked like this question. It was something like, oh, take something that's really complicated, whatever it is, and just describe it in one sentence. And I was like, da, da, da. I said, give me a moment, da, da, da. And so I did parenting.
To steal that. When you asked that question, I put myself right now in that scenario, and I was having a mini panic attack. Like, how do you answer something like that? That's wild, right? Because that's not like like you were talking about earlier, zero, black and white. No, this is a psychological exam. What just happened there? That is
Exactly. And that's the question that it got me the job, my response. Cause I said, okay, parenting. I said, you raise kids, you nurture them, you nourish them, this, that, and then they grow to whatever. And then you let them fly. And they were like, and someone actually a mom was like, oh, I'm going to use that. This is cool. And so that was wonderful. I was at that job for 3.5 years. And I was working on New Partnerships Initiative, MPI, and basically we're making it easier for partners to work with us.
right.
So we were opening the doors of USAID, which was so cool. And the best part for me is that I got to travel globally.
Wow.
Like I was out at least once a quarter traveling. Nepal, El Salvador. I was at the Congo like 4 different times, DRC. And I was actually on my way to DRC on January 24th when they said all travel's off. And I remember crying because I was like, I really want to just escape, right? Because January 20th, as we know, is when many executive orders came out. And one of them was to basically dismantle USAID.
Right.
Right. So I was like, okay, if I can just get out and be in a mission for a while, like we called our country offices missions. But I was like, even in Kinshasa, right? People are like, what? Like even the mission director there, he'd be like, I can't believe it. You're the only person I ever know that say you would come to Kinshasa to like relax.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's the biggest African crazy city. And it's just not. It's just like it's hard. It's a very hard environment to live in, work in, right? The Wi-Fi is not good, and it's just a lot of things. But I love Africa anyway because I was there for 12.5 years, and it's in my heart. If you can see, I have
Yep.
it's
Yep.
yeah, and it's Tanzanite where
And
Tanzania is.
in the back too, right? I mean, it's just
yeah. Is it?
Yeah. No,
Can you see it?
Yeah. We'll expand
okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Africa is home for me. And yeah, so that hurt really bad. And so I absolutely love my job. You know what, being in the field and meeting with local partners, I'm bilingual, I speak French. So going to francophone countries and then presenting all the tools and things to partners, how to make it easier, how to apply for USA funding, all these things. And they'd come up to me and be like, oh my God, thank you for not forgetting us. And I'd be
Right.
like, oh my God. And also for me, I am so grateful, even though it's been a really hard ride. I'm so grateful that I have a global family, that I have like the local staff around the world. Like this goes back to relationship building.
Right,
I
exactly.
feel like I've always advocated for them within the agency because there's always power dynamics with Americans and local staff. Right. And they were trying to address it. But I was like, whenever I'd go, we called them TDYs, like short assignments. It's a military term, but I'd often go out for 5 to 6 weeks. Right. And I was like, yeah, this is heaven for me, man.
Yeah.
And then people were like, whoa, don't leave. They're like, we need you to move here. And I was like, oh. I embed myself with the local staff. I'd hang out with them. I'd talk to them. In Nepal, join them for tea. Like it would be fun. I loved it with the ladies. And I feel like I'm so grateful that I have a global community of brothers and sisters. Like, and I literally mean that I think that I'm so proud of the work we were able to do and impact all of their communities, right? And the beneficiaries. And then, talking about feeling seen, remember we talked about that, like people want to feel seen, understood. There's that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And
Stealing that too. Thank you. Cool.
oh, it's not mine. It's somewhere. It's a quote.
Doesn't matter whose
somewhere.
it is. I'm taking it. It's mine now.
But if you think about it, right? Like
Yeah.
seek first in any kind of relationship, even with your kids, your
100%.
spouse, whatever. And it just it can actually diffuse things.
Yeah, it confuses people. It's funny when because I've practiced that. You know, I don't have a good phrase for it, but when I first met my wife, it was her talking and time me just quiet towards, you know, one whole week of this like courting process. And she goes to me, it's like Friday, and I met her on a Monday. Something about Solomon Grundy, you know, just kidding. And on Friday she goes, are you even interested here? And I just start rattling off every single story, event, thing that she's been, you know, talking about the whole week. And she's like, oh, right. Because I don't think a lot of people do that anymore, which is just listen, hear what people are talking, invest you in them, right? Invest in them, you know, by listening. And it's just another, like talking about lost business skills, right? Where sometimes just take that moment and just listen, right? And
shut up. Yeah,
shut up, right? Just shut up and listen to what you're either being asked of, or be empathetic to people, right? Just give a listening ear. It's such an amazing skill set. And the fact that, again, back to your skills that you've been developing all these years, that's probably another ginormous one, right?
Yeah. And I think for me, sometimes it is challenging because I am an extrovert, right?
Right.
I have all these things that I need to get out. And I'm like, oh, because I'm like one of those brainstormers. Like I can, like you're talking about, like, dude, this is what we need to do. Put this, connect this. You need to talk to this. I'm also an internal networker. I was like, oh my God, you need to talk to this person and this person. And they're like, what? Right. So I often have to, especially for introverts in any type of audience, I need to like shut my mouth.
Yeah.
And then if I'm facilitating, I'll be like, oh, what do you think? And I've had to like learn and master that skill. But I am a great listener, but it's like finding that balance, and that's self-awareness, because I love to talk. I totally do. I could talk all day, every day. And yeah, there is like, okay, so how do you balance that so that, you know, and then I'm like, oh crap, if someone really needs me, I got to put my listening ear on. And the empathy thing, because I also think empathy is one of my superpowers too, is that I feel things deeply. As a kid, I did. And I often growing up, I was like, I want to turn these emotions off. I just need to be a robot.
Right.
And then I had a therapist back in the day. I was like, well, then you wouldn't be you. And I was like,
right.
Oh, damn, right?
It's like that cartoon bulb, like, you know what I mean?
Damn, yeah. Right? I know, it's exactly. So it's to be human is to feel emotions. We're not, right? And you can numb them. Lots of people do in many different ways, but the only way, through is through, whatever that is. Yeah, and so I lost my job February 8th. So that was the last day. It's part of my journey. It's been hard. It was really hard that I had to hand in my computer and my badge and back in March, and just like.
In your situation, though, very different. So I lost my job in August, completely different scenarios, right? But yours seems so much more challenging in the sense that, right, I have my business people and my coworkers. You have, maybe I'm exaggerating, a duty, an international duty of like relationships. Like you said, your network is very, like my network is like at a bar meeting, small business people. Your network is like a struggling mother in Tanzania, or a farmer who's trying to develop a crop, or, insert insane to cope with scenario here. It's a very different losing your job when you lose your job, where you're aiding and I'm just trying to solve tech problems, right? I mean, those are two different things. And the reason I said, I hope people are watching this, because the USAID thing, this is going to be the second person that I've talked to who's dealt with USAID. And look, I get all the politics and why this, that, the other, but at the crux of it, people are hurting. I don't, it's not political. People, these are relationships that save lives, in my opinion. And that sucks, so it's a very different, and just, I wanted to highlight that, right? It's a very different, you losing this, because versus like the rest of the white collar recession that's going on, in the globe too, but tech, whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like, and also like our sector has been obliterated,
Yeah.
right?
Instant, like
Right.
bomb.
And so that is that. And listen, internally, since 2011, we all like that's how long I was with the agency, right? And so we always knew we had reform every 4 years, right?
Right.
Because every new administrator that would come in, a new president, we have this initiative, right? So how many presidents did I go under? And then Hillary Clinton came out,
Yeah.
and I'm like Bush and Obama, like I've seen them all in Tanzania and Africa, right? And so we've always had to adapt, bipartisan. We don't, because we were very neutral. We don't care. We're not allowed to talk about politics. We just need to do the work on the ground, like you said, whether it's HIV prevention, whether it's agriculture, whether it's democracy and human rights and helping civil society organizations, whether it's helping journalists. I mean, peacekeeping and conflict, right? Helping people who've been in a civil war actually come together, reconcile, and work together. Youth who have been marginalized in these wars, for example. How do you develop your own business and like succeed? And I've seen all these things. I've lived it. I've seen it. And the thing is that like when you're lived experience, there's things you can never unsee, right? I've seen the poverty. I've seen the moms with the babies at the clinic who are wasting because they don't have food. It's a technical term for like, starving basically, and they're not have proper nutrition. And then, and for me, it's just like, people be like, do you have to go to these countries? And I'd be like, no, but I want to. And I loved it. And I never have thought like, because people be like, wow, like that's incredible. And I never thought about it like that. I just thought this is my calling. Like I literally thought I found in 2011, I was like, I found my calling. Like, this is it. I'm never going to leave this sector ever. Well, boom.
Just kidding. Yeah. Haha. Had a B2 bomber to your
I know.
to your life.
I know. I was like, oh man, I had a good ride. But you're right. So the grief sits very heavy.
And this is where I want to get to this whole story to get to your project and what you're doing and why I want to circle back with you, because this is amazing. Where are you going with this?
Yeah. So I signed. So February 8th, done. Right. Like, okay, let's pivot again. So for me, I was like, and this is what I called it like my Renaissance sabbatical, but I've also very much identified, I created this image in AI of a woman, a phoenix from the flames. She's in a red dress and she's rising from the flames again. So I feel like resiliency muscle, right? And I'm like, damn.
So I want to take a beat here. Remember, it's so weird. You took German. We had talked a long time ago. We talked about German, this, that. Every time you say something, I'm like, wow, I have a giant phoenix tattoo. I'm not going to take it out, but on my chest, like this whole thing.
You should just be like,
woo, flash a nip. No, it's so funny. Yeah. I mean, I identify with the phoenix. So again, this is why I feel like we have this connection. It's so weird. Like there's something about life throwing you these hand grenades and just rising up, just rise up.
Right. And that's exactly it that I feel throughout my life, personally and professionally. I have like been burned to the ashes, literally the ashes.
Yep.
And I've had to like come out and rebuild and reinvent. And so this image for me is gorgeous because I was like red dress woman, this, that. And I was like, yes. So I actually see it in my visual all the time.
Right.
This is who I am. I'm going to rise because I have, that's what I say to all of the viewers or listeners, that you have that ability. It sucks. You have to dig out, but you can do it, because if you just look back on your past, your history of your own life, because to be human is to suffer, right? That's just a thing. There's setbacks, whatever they are. And then you build yourself up, right? If you can remember that, there's some muscle memory there.
Mm-hmm.
And I say like resiliency muscle. I'm like, damn, she's so buff. Can she just stop working out? Right? That's
exactly.
Right?
It's like flexed.
Exercising it, like,
mm-hmm.
boo, boo.
Yep.
And just mindset too. I've been working a lot on mindset, Gus.
Yeah.
Woo. And people will say to me, well, how are you so joyful with all this stuff going on? I said, I choose to be. I choose joy.
That's right.
And it's a daily, hourly, depending process that I'm like, okay, because it feels so much better to live in this space. Doesn't mean I'm not in reality. It doesn't mean I'm not grieving. You can grieve and still move on at the
Hmm.
same time. Both
Yeah.
things are true.
Right.
And yeah, so grief. Should we talk about grief?
We should talk about grief.
Okay. So I think for me, I've experienced a lot of grief in my life personally and professionally, right? Each time the job losses on, we talked about that. And okay, what am I going to do now when I grow up? And I'm still asking myself, okay, what am I going to do when I grow up now? And I'm soon to be 53 next month. So I still
Right.
ask myself, why not? It's
Yep.
never too late.
Yep.
Everybody, it's never too late to do what you want to do. Right? You're actually right on time, which I actually really love. I think that you're right on time.
Yeah. Be in the
Just
present.
just doing the actions. Yeah, so I experienced my parents, I lost my dad in my 20s, my mom in my 30s. I've had a lot of loss, big families,
Yeah.
probability, lots of
Right.
weird. And I think relationships, I'm divorced. I think, on the grief checklist, I'm like, check, check,
A
check,
lot of
check,
checks.
check.
Yep.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right? And so, and I grew up in it was a very traumatic household, things like that, right? So I've healed, moved on, things like that. And so it's funny, I used to say, like, I could teach a master class in grief. And people would be like, what?
Right.
And I'm a very open
Hmm.
person. I'm very vulnerable. I like to share, once again, helping people. If my story can help somebody, that's a win for me. Like one person, right? If I can inspire one person to be like, listen, stay alive. I'm not even
Yeah.
joking, right? That I've
Priority
suffered
one.
with depression, yeah. And you know what? Youth suicide in the United States it's so high. And having raised a teenager, I was always like, what's in your mental health toolkit? What do you do? How do you like cope? What are your coping things? Music for him, it was music and movies and friends and things like that. And so I think that for me, it's like, if I can share that, it's powerful for me and you know what? That's my calling now. That like so what I'm doing is I'm writing a book on grief. And yeah, grief. And people, I say I'm writing a book, they're like, oh, what? I
Yeah.
go, grief. They're like, oh.
Oh, are you okay?
Right?
Are you
Yeah,
okay? Yeah.
I know it is.
Yeah.
It's such, because listen, nobody wants to talk about it,
No,
right?
it's taboo, and and like you just said, and everybody goes through it, right?
Right.
Obviously on different levels, but we all suffer.
Exactly. Grief
Yeah.
is universal for humans. Like, to
Yeah.
be human is to grieve, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, it could be pet loss. It could be, like I said,
For sure.
relationships. It's everything. Anything, your jobs, your like money. It's so many forms of it
And the
that,
other thing is that they could be staggered, right? So some, like you said, 20s, 30s, 40s, or you could get hit with all of it at once.
oh,
And how to,
100%.
yeah, get through that, right?
Right. Like my son flew. I say I'm a bird launcher, not an empty nester mindset. Thank you, Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins actually coined that. And I said, yeah, he launched in September. I grieving from that. I'm like, my
Yeah.
house is, my baby. He's 20, but he's still my
Yeah,
baby. All
for
the
sure.
moms out there, they're always your
Mm.
baby, right?
Always. Mm.
And he doesn't mind as much now, right? I'm not a baby.
Mhm.
But yeah, so and then I lost this. Like I lost
Yeah.
like what
Your
had felt
calling.
like my
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so in March I turned the corner, I like to say, and I just realized I was able to, like, I went to this 2-week coaching and I was like, whoa, I am not my job.
Yeah.
Right. And it just was I was so entrenched and enmeshed that I even had adopted values.
Yeah.
Right. Like it was so wild. And I happily would have just continued working in this field because, of course, passion for mission, passion for mission. And so then I was like, okay, okay, this giant door closed, but look at all these windows opening. What is
That's
this
right.
looking like? So I have had whispers, I call them, for about 20 years that I want to write a book and I
Hmm.
want to do a TED talk.
Yep.
right? So life happens, right? You get a job, you have a kid, you raise them, you put your dreams on hold, right? And also wanted to do a business. I mean, I started my first business when I was 12, my babysitting business. It was called Rainbow Babysitting.
Nice. Branding. It's all about
I
branding.
know. And like it was an acronym, and I still remember the drawing. And then it had R was for respect. Each letter was an acronym. My dad, because back in the day, my dad made copies at work and brought them back and they colored them with highlighters. It was a family thing, right? And
Awesome.
I scored 2 clients for 4 years to babysit.
Boom.
Yeah. So
It's
I
the
think I've
mindset.
always,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I've always had that. And my parents actually, my dad was in a union. So he always advocated for justice and fairness. And I did not realize that this came out like about a year ago. And I was like, oh my God, this is why I advocate. I am like, right? I'm the one who will speak up, right? For whatever it is. And I have. And sometimes I get my hand slapped for it. Sorry, I just can't sit there and watch whatever it is that,
Exactly. Yep.
So, and I feel like I want to speak up about grief, for example. Yeah. So and I found that, whatever your gift is, and people in the past, I don't know how many years, have been coming to me about grief. They're like, Flo, just tell me
How do I
what,
get through? Yeah. What do I do?
how do I be? What do I do? Like
Yeah.
what? And I was like, okay, let's sit down, because they knew I would talk about it.
Yeah. Or you
Right.
listen.
And
Back to listening. You're
yes,
gonna listen.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
That I'm open, I'm vulnerable. I am going to listen. And then they'd be like, what do I do? I was like, okay, well, and I have my thing, like, just be whatever comes up for you. Don't tell anybody. Don't let anybody tell you how to grieve. Grief is not like this. It's not linear. It's like, whoop, 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 right? And it is, right? Still, for my mom and dad, sometimes I'll be like, I want to call my mom. Right? Or I just, certain things. And grief, that's the wild thing about it. It can hit you anytime, any place.
Yep.
And it just goes, oh, right? It's like,
it cripples.
That's right. And that I still remember it when my dad passed in my 20s. I lost my nana, I lost my grandpa, whatever it was. But then my dad, it was just like this physical, psychic pain, like literally in my body.
Severed connection.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought, I'm just going to die from the heartache. Like literally it feels like that. And then, so yeah, I decided, I was like, well, people keep asking me, and I feel like, yay, I'm going to do it. I'm like, I'm going to write the book. So these are like one of the doors. I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, I'm going to start a business even on grief. And I want to focus on grief in the workplace.
Yeah. And that's where it ties in beautifully, right? Where it's all these life experiences, and it ties into exactly. It's like you've been developing this tree, right, with all these roots in different, internationally, locally. Obviously, I joke like technology because it's crazy over there. People are broken, but you've put these roots out, and it's just developed you into this tree, and now you're going to share that fruit with people. And I think that's just so cool that how your story kind of builds up to this, where you're like, here's this pear, you're gonna be okay, from all this growth.